Steve Arena, thanks for joining me on my podcast, PDX Media, Good Old Days. What does that say about us when we are the good old days?
Boy, I tell you, emphasize old. Wow. When you contacted me earlier this week, it really, forced me to look back and just, detail, what we've gone through. And, I'm 66 now. And, I started my television days when I was 21, 22.
Yeah.
They were wonderful days, but boy, I tell you, time has just blown by. And, I always think of those times and the people that I worked with, and miss them dearly, always will. And they were just really good times.
It's probably not unique to a newsroom. Other businesses have the same thing. But boy, when you're in the trenches with people, as we were, sports news, all the different jobs, photographers, reporters, producers, editors, there's a great bond there that never goes away.
And that's one of the things I miss the most is the camaraderie of it all. I grew up playing team sports, up until my professional career. So I was brought up in a team atmosphere. And, a lot of the viewers at home, don't realize, how many people it takes to put together a newscast and what all is involved. I was the fortunate one, people saw me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just thought that I did it all, which obviously I didn't. I mean, all the people in the backgrounds back then that worked hard every day to make me look good.
Yeah.
And, visually, I got all the credit, but all the people in the background that worked tirelessly, weekdays, weekends, called upon to do, additional broadcasts, features, special programming. It was just really a thing of passion, I think, for everybody. And you just don't realize the effort.
And when you talk about that, one thing came to my mind was it used to be when we would go to like a football game in Oregon or Corvallis, they weren't on TV back then.
Right.
It took your reporter, your photographer, your engineer that went down and set up 2 different hops of a microwave signal so you could get back to the station. And then, in the end, the guy on the air reads the highlights, but it was a 4 or 5 person job to cover that event.
Right. Back then, technology is just constantly improving every day. But when I got into the business in '77, it was all film.
Yeah.
And
you were at the end of film.
You went out and I can't say you actually covered anything. Basically, what you did was you sent your photographer out there, and the instructions were roll off 400 feet. Of anything, just guys playing football or baseball, just roll off 400 feet because you have to be back in the building by 8 o'clock or 8:30 to get the film to the lab, to get it processed by 10, to edit it by 10:30, 10:45, and then you would have that on the air. But you would just generally write a script, over video that just really didn't make any sense. But as time went on, we moved into videotape, and then the live shots, and then on top of the live shots, exactly what you mentioned, and that brings back memories too. Mary's Peak was the place that you went and parked your van, the microwave van. The driver would go to Mary's Peak early in the day to get set up, which is the highest location, so you could beam a signal to Mary's Peak just to get the highlights back for the 5 o'clock news. And how many times do you remember just writing your script in the car driving to get to the van to record your script and get it back to the studio to the people there that could edit it and get it on the air, and hopefully things timed out. But boy, what an effort it was.
So credit there goes to a guy named Dave Angier, who was engineer at Channel 8 for years and years and years, an Oregon State grad, because that happened my first year in 1983 in the fall. Right. We used to shoot like the first half, and then the engineer would drive up to Salem and send it back to the 5 o'clock news. And then you'd shoot the rest of the game and bring it back for 11. But Angier, kind of looked up at that mountain next to Autzen Stadium, or there was a different one for Corvallis. He said, I think I can get a stinger and receive the stinger and then take it to the truck and send it. I think I can hit it. And it worked. And I remember he was very secretive about where you went to park to make that transition happen. everybody eventually figured it out. But I remember being the first one to be able to get the entire game back as we did with that live stream of a college football game because of that man, Dave Angier, figured it out.
So all those things that, you know, when you sit at home and you watch, you don't know. But I'm telling you, the feeling of pulling it off.
Yeah.
At the end of the newscast, pulling it off.
Right.
Being able to set up back then satellite windows of 10 minutes to get some critical Blazer video back on a road trip.
Right.
Because they weren't on TV back then.
Exactly.
You know, so all your effort was, you know, satellite. All of a sudden you had this satellite opportunity. You know, remember 10-minute windows on Telstar, and you would have to coordinate with the sports department in, you know, Boston,
Cleveland.
And, you know, just all those kinds of things that you had to do just to get some video on the air. But boy, I tell you, the feeling when it was all over was just like a victory.
You know, I went to Alabama to cover Portland State in the national championship game.
Right.
And they sent myself and a photographer down there, and everybody went. You know, your crews went as well at Channel 2 and at Channel 6. And we were there a day ahead of time, and we were doing some preview stuff. And then we went through the Birmingham affiliate to send our stuff back on satellite. And something got screwed up, and we didn't get it on the air. You know, and so the opposite of that great feeling of pull it off was, oh no, this didn't work. And I remember talking to my assignment editor. He was not happy. He said, you know, we paid a lot of money to get you guys down there. We didn't get stuff back. And I said, these guys don't know what they're doing. The story was done. We had it to master control. We had all this stuff. So Steve, the next day or maybe later that afternoon, Oregon State or somebody hired a college administrator to be the superintendent of higher education out of Birmingham. And so we got an interview of that guy, you know, to send back.
Right.
And they screwed it up again. And then I remember I called the assignment and says, now you know what we're going through.
Yeah, and so many things had to work to actually get stuff on the air. I mean, you had a list of 10 different things that would have to work. And then you always you're dealing with these deadlines, and the deadlines just never go away. And that just adds so much pressure to the equation. I mean, if you didn't have the deadline, I mean, it'd be an easy, deal. You know, and then you transition to, remember, the Winterhawks were just, you know, they just exploded onto the scene, you know, making their Memorial Cups and the run to the Memorial Cups, and a lot of their games, you know, their critical games were in Kamloops and all those places. And, you know, we would actually, you know, we tried a couple times, and you're dealing with other things just so much out of your control. But I remember our crew would go shoot the game, and then they'd drive back to the bus station, send the film, and we would get it like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and somehow
the next day,
transfer it to video and get it on the air. But all those kinds of things, just you look back and you think, man, oh man, was it worth it? And yeah. It was. It was just totally worth it, because good stories. And, you know what? I mean, where else you can experience that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I both lucky enough to do it in our hometowns. That does not happen to a lot of people who wanted to be sports reporters or news reporters. So you were, it was LaSalle High School, right?
Yes.
And then to Linfield.
Yes.
And were you like an intern at KATU before you got your job?
I interned in 1977 in January and February, and I basically lived there. I was just so intrigued by it all. At Linfield, I worked a lot in radio, a lot of radio play-by-play, and was a disc jockey, if you can believe that. I got my DJ license.
I did too, man.
All of that. So I worked in radio for 3 or 4 years, and to graduate, you needed to do an internship. And I thought, you know, it'd be silly to do an internship in radio, because I've done it. So I decided to try television. And so I sent out letters to all the TV stations, and the one station that responded was Channel 2. So I was accepted as an intern, and back then there was no pay at all, and I didn't care. It was the experience, and I was there every minute of every day. Didn't work just in sports, but spent time in all the departments, And it was a blast. And then I went back
I
to
had
school.
that same experience at KATU.
Yeah.
You couldn't pull me away from that place.
Oh, yeah. And that's why internships are so great, because you start developing relationships with those who work there. And at the end, if you do a good job and you show passion and you're ready to work and you work hard, I mean, you've got those people on your side. And I wasn't expecting to get a job at Channel 2, but having those recommendations for other jobs in smaller markets would really help.
Mm-hmm.
So I went January and February, and then I went back to finish up my last semester at Linfield. And right towards the end of my internship, the actual sports producer became ill and couldn't continue on the job. So once I went back to school, they called me and wanted to know if I could produce work on the 11 o'clock sportscast every night. So obviously,
yeah,
it was a quick and big yes. And so what I did was I played baseball and got my studying done. And then at 6 or 6:30 at night, I'd drive up to Channel 2, and then I'd work on the 11 o'clock newscast.
Amazing.
Until I graduated. And when I graduated at the end of May, they offered me a full-time job. And I tell you, you look back and the struggles that a lot of people have just getting into the business. And once they get into the business, going to the small markets and just really working for virtually nothing. And the fact that we were able to break in our hometown in a 20 to 25 size market was just, to this day, I'm thankful.
Who was the sports director when you started?
Dick Carr.
Dick Carr. Okay. He followed a guy named Rod Luck, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Rod Luck. The stories are still out there with Rod Luck. He was one of those guys that
is a podcast in itself, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know where he is these days, but boy, I tell you, he was a legend in his short period of time. And he was one of those guys that was popular very quickly by just doing strange and goofy things.
Yeah. Well, your internship story into a job is, I had the same experience just a few years later at KGW. Got there, worked hard, was good because of my education up at WSU, and then somebody left, and they got me in there, and you keep working hard, keep moving up, good things happen.
Right, you just put yourself in position to take advantage of a break. And you talk about being in our hometown. Now, there's some pressure that comes with being in your hometown. I mean, all your friends and your buddies and your families are there watching every night and just watching you screw up and do things. And boy, I tell you, it was embarrassing. I had some embarrassing moments. And, whenever, you get off the air, you go, have fun with your friends and things like that, they bring up those moments. And, it was definitely a transition, and it was hard. I mean, there were some hard things that
you learn on the job.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows what you're doing, and they know who you are.
I was the third guy in the sports department, and so I would anchor weekends, when somebody was on vacation. And my parents would sit at home and tape every sportscast on a weekend, the 5, the 10, the 11, then the 5 on Sunday, and the 11 on Sunday. So at home, there was this rack of tapes of VHS tapes of all the times that I had anchored. I don't know that anybody ever watched them, but they did that.
And they would critique, though. They would critique.
They would.
My mom would critique me every night. You look tired. You didn't seem like you were right, or why'd you do this and why'd you do that? But it was helpful.
Well, and you were a legend at Linfield. Let me tell you this story. I used to go to basketball camp in the summer out in Vernonia, Perry's basketball camp, run by a family. And Ted Wilson of Linfield was there. He was the guy in charge of basketball instruction.
Right.
He ran the basketball stuff. And I went there every summer from 10 until 18. I actually worked as a counselor there my last year. So I knew Ted pretty well, and he knew my dad. And there, my last year there, he said, well, Carl, where are you going to college? And I said, well, I'm going to go to Washington State because I want to be in broadcasting and things like that. He goes, well, Linfield's a good school. And I said, well, Mr. Wilson, I don't think I'm going to play basketball in college. And then I saw the look on his face and realized he was not recruiting me to play basketball, but he was very proud of Linfield. And he said, that Steve Arena kid, he was awesome. He learned everything here at Linfield, and now he's working at KATU. You had a big fan in Ted Wilson because you probably did his play-by-play all the time too out there, right?
Well, yeah, and he didn't talk about the check that I sent him after he said that either. So no, Ted was a remarkable guy.
Yeah.
That whole fraternity at Linfield. It just was a perfect fit for me. And he was tough, but boy, he was fair.
Yeah.
And his success is second to none. He just did, and he was there forever. And he's one of those guys that he didn't know me from Adam prior to all this and the TV things and all of that. But he was the kind of guy that you walk by and he would stop and he would shake your hand and say, "Hey, how you doing? And you know what? If there's anything I can do for you, you know where my office is."
You bet.
And I didn't play basketball for him. He never recruited me for anything. As a freshman on campus, he didn't know me, but then he was the first guy that would come up to me and introduce himself and say, "Hey, you need anything, just, you know where my office is."
We learned that lesson about Linfield at my house because my daughter went to Linfield. She was pre-med, and I was thinking she needed to go to more of a science school like PLU or
Right.
UW or that kind of thing. She looked at those schools, but she chose Linfield, played tennis there, and got an incredibly good education at that liberal arts school. Got into the science department, did internships, did research, and it was a great place for her, and it led to her to med school. And we love Linfield. Go Cats!
Oh yeah, and it's all about a fit too. I mean, it's it's part of the decision-making process when you're looking at schools. I went to LaSalle, which was a small school, and my graduating class was like 100. So it didn't make any sense for me to go to a large, campus and, an Oregon or Oregon State or whatever. I probably could have survived there, but I just felt that the smaller atmosphere would better suit me. Plus, I was playing baseball, and I remember going down prior to in my senior year watching baseball games. Man, it was something special because the whole town would come out.
Yeah.
On a weekend or weekday or whatever. I mean, sports at Linfield was just a community event, whether it was baseball, basketball, of course, football.
Yeah.
But boy, I just loved the atmosphere, and it really motivated me to go there. It was expensive, but then I got a lot of work study and things like that to kind of make it through. Got a small baseball grant that helped a bit, but I was basically a walk-on. But they were 4 great years. I thoroughly enjoyed them.
Well, and it got you ready for your career, didn't it, man?
It did. It did. And, when you're going through the process, you're just not thinking of that end result. And you just have to plug away and kind of make your game plan as you go, because life changes, things change, every day. And if I would have told you, or you would have told me at the beginning of my career at Linfield, I'd be, 4 years later on TV in Portland, I would have said, "You're nuts." But, sometimes it just happens, and you just have to be prepared to take advantage of a moment. And that's all I can say.
So you're at KATU doing the work there, and it didn't take you long before they needed you as sports director. I mean, that was only a couple of years before you were the main guy.
Right. I started full-time in basically late spring, early summer of '77. And that was, the Blazers' big run to the NBA championship. So I was thrown into the mix. I was thinking the other day, it was me and my fraternity brothers, drinking beer, watching, the Blazers begin their playoff run, winning that mini series against the Bulls, and then beating Denver, and then they beat the Lakers, and then all of a sudden, I'm not at the fraternity house drinking beer with my buddies anymore.
At the Coliseum.
At Channel 2, watching highlights, editing, in the locker room, going to the airport with 20,000 fans, greeting them back from Philadelphia after their winning Game 5. And it was like, whoa, where am I, and what am I doing, and how do I do it? It's just, what am I doing, and how do I do it? So I got through that. Obviously I didn't enjoy the run as a fan like I would have. I was just so overwhelmed with everything that
It's a great year to start, man.
Oh man! And then after the playoff run and they won the championship, Dick took 2 weeks off, went on vacation. Now all of a sudden I'm sitting on the set, actually doing sportscasts. This was in middle to late June, and I didn't know how to tie a tie. I didn't want a tie. I didn't have a sport coat. Dress shirts, so my dad would tie my ties before I'd go to work, so I'd just slip them all over my head when I got there. And I always look back to those days, and a photographer by the name, back then you rotated photographers week by week to do sports. And back then it was Gary Lord.
I remember Gary, yeah.
Yeah, a long time photographer here locally. And he had me those 2 weeks that Dick was gone. And I look back to that experience, and it was so helpful, so encouraging, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know out in the field what to do. And he just took me under his wing and just guided me through those 2 weeks. And you look back at people that really help you and are really people that just kind of send you on your way, get you to the next level. It was Gary Lord back then. He just those 2 weeks, without him, I wouldn't have made it.
Well, photographers should get a lot of credit for being great mentors and teachers of young reporters. And I hope they probably don't get the credit, but they should get a lot of thanks, because the same thing happened to me. I was an intern. They sent me out on stories, or I was an early reporter, and those people, they were teaching me how to do the job as we did it. Same that Gary did for you. So they were very patient.
Oh yeah, they were. They didn't have to be. Boy, I tell you, I was really surprised that they were as patient with me as they were, because boy, I pulled off some doozies.
So I remember your sports department at one time. It was you when I got there in '82. Bill Boaz,
Right.
And Steve Wick was a pretty young guy when he started with you.
Right.
Didn't you at one time have you and Bill Boaz, Steve Wick, and Al Wynn all at the same time? 4 guys. Does that make sense?
I don't think Boaz was there when Al was there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Boaz was gone. He went into finance, and he hit a home run. He did very well, from what I understand. And then Al Wynn came in, and Al had a successful career in radio here locally, and moved into TV. So yeah, it was myself and Al and Steve Wick. Steve was moving his way up, and all those guys
let's bring up somebody else. Somebody else that was really, really important to that group and your sports cast. Photographer named Phil Baird.
Right.
Now, as the reporter, most of the time on the field, I'd see Bill and Steve Wick and Pat Helberg and all the guys, but always the photographers who shot sports, like Phil, all the time. And A, hard-working son of a gun, and B,
Right.
nicest guy in the world in the field.
And C, in no particular order, he did a great job.
Yeah.
He came to Portland from Eugene, from KECI, I believe. It was a long time ago. So, but when he came into Portland, he came in as a generic news photographer, and he started shooting sports, and he shot sports like no other.
Yeah.
He actually was able to anticipate plays, never was faked out, always had the ball going into the hoop. In football, the same way. I mean, he just knew how to shoot it. And he was really, and this is no disrespect to any other photographer out there, because they were shooting news all the time, and it's a whole different deal. But Phil came in, and not only did he just do a great job, but he was so fun and easy to work with. And there are these little nuances that are so important when you're doing stories, shooting games, that photographers, experienced photographers, they know those nuances. They know how to act. They know where their place is. It's just all those kinds of things combined, and Phil was the complete package.
Yeah, I love being out there in the field with Phil, because he was all that, and he was just a wonderfly nice guy to be around.
Yeah, and you're in the trenches. You mentioned earlier, you're in the trenches, and it's stressful, and the majority of the time you're beat, you're tired, and you don't have patience, and one little thing can send somebody off. And he had the perfect personality for the trade.
Yeah, we all ended up at the same places all the time, so we tried to get along pretty well. Channel 6 had a guy named Gary Beck who shot sports, and he was really good.
Same deal.
And we had Corey Long at Channel 8. And they were all the same kind of people. They were really good at that job. I remember coming back from a hockey game with Corey, and there'd been like 6 goals. And, you know, we edited the highlights and put it on the air. And then Corey went back and he looked at his raw tape. And he came back and said, there were 6 goals, and I had the puck out of frame on those goals for only 6 frames total.
You know, they take pride.
Yeah.
They take pride in that.
Because that puck moves really fast. And you know, even with my naked eye, I couldn't see where it was going. But when a guy took a slap shot from the point, Corey, Phil, and Gary, they were all falling right to the net. And he wanted to have it in frame the whole time.
Oh, yeah. And they take pride. They really take pride, especially hockey.
Yeah.
Because hockey is hard to watch, let alone, you know, look through a camera and figure out what's going on and finding the puck. But their anticipation, you know, Gary was the same way at Channel 6. You watch his stuff, they knew where it was. They knew what was going to happen next. And they were always a step ahead.
So Steve, I wanted to go back to your and my first interaction together, which I guarantee you will not remember.
Oh boy. I hope this is good.
So, well, I'm going to give you the first and the second. The first one was you were at KATU. This was the summer of 1981. I was in college. Still hadn't done my internship yet. But I was doing the public address announcing at Kiggins Bowl in Vancouver for the high school all-star football game in August. Which, August, sports, nothing's happening. Oh, yeah. You know, the Beavers were out of town and whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So you sent a photographer. I don't remember who it was. They shot a couple of highlights. And then they gave your business card to me and said, hey, could you call in the final score?
Right. That's how we did it those days. Yeah.
Which I did 100 times in my career at every high school event I ever went to. Here's my card. When we're all done, we got to go leave the score. So the game's over. And I'm on the phone in the press box to call, and, you know, and I want to have this conversation with Steve Arena because I want to be a sportscaster just like him and all that kind of stuff. And I picked up the phone, and, you know, you picked up the phone. And, hi, Steve, this is Carl Click in Vancouver. And I want to give you the score from the high school all-star game. It was, you know, North 35 and South 21 and blah, blah, blah. And you go, thank you very much. And now, you know, it's like 10:30, you're getting ready for a newscast and you're ready to get off the phone. And so you thank you very much, goodbye. And all I could think to say was, I don't know why this came out of my mouth, but as you were hanging up the phone because you were busy, I just said, remember my name.
I'm sorry, Carl. I hope you understand. Yeah.
I do.
You know, yeah, that reminds me, you know, that's how we got our scores back then.
If that person
and
didn't
imagine,
call,
especially with high school, you go out and you shoot some video and you come back and you're relying on somebody to call in a score, and they don't call in 90% of the time.
Yeah, if you were lucky, if it got on the wire or
the
whatever.
wire never had it. And you know, and then you get one person calling in the score, and then the next person would call in the same score, but it would be different. So yeah, you were right. It's 10:30. I'm sorry. It's one of those.
I just love the fact that, you know, I had to learn in the business that guy on that end is busy, and the fact that all I thought to say was remember my name.
I did. I remembered your name.
So the first time I met you in person was at the '83 NBA draft, which was where the Blazers selected Clyde Drexler. I'd never seen you in the field because, you know, I was out there with the other guys, and I just remember that you came in, you sat down next to me, and you introduced yourself, said, hi, I'm Steve Arena, nice to meet you, I see you on Channel 8. You were just incredibly friendly. You didn't have to be, you know, you were the sports director at the other station. There were some people in our market that we worked with that, you know, weren't, you know, they're doing a job they didn't care about, but you were just incredibly friendly. It was a nice interaction. And then I remember when it got to be really close to the Blazers pick, you just like say, hey, Carl, what do you think they're going to do? I said, I don't know.
I don't think nobody knew, but it was always fun. And, you know, that brings up a subject that I've thought about a lot. And I really enjoyed going out in the field but I didn't feel it was the best way to produce a sports program for me. And, I got a lot of times people say, well, I never see you out there. I never see you out there. Why aren't you out there? I felt the best way to do it for us was for me to stay back at the station, take care of all the details, watch all the highlights, edit my program, write it by myself. Because the one thing I couldn't do, I couldn't have people write it for me and pull it off on the air. I just couldn't do it. I felt that I owned that program. And when your face is taking responsibility for it, I just felt the best thing for me was to send Ron Carlson out, to send Jerry Murphy out, to send Steve Wick out. That was their job. Mm-hmm. So they spent time out in the field. They brought things back. They did their features. I produced the program, and the consistency of that program night after night after night, I wanted it to be perfect. I didn't want any mess ups. I didn't want any mistakes. I didn't want me up there stumbling and bumbling, trying to figure out, what this person wrote. And I just felt that it was better for me to stay indoors, have everything come to me, make, production decisions on my own, and put the program on the air. Plus, when you're doing the 5 and the 6:30, and then you're turning around at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, you guys had an extra newscast.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have time to go down and, BS with, people and come back at 9 o'clock and expect to put on a decent program.
Well, that's pretty much how we all did it. Scott at Channel 8, Metzger at Channel 6, and Michael Bryan was at Channel 12 those days.
Right.
But it's so different now than when we did it because, sports barely fits into a newscast now. I mean, I think we used to have 4 minutes at 11, and then on the weekends you'd have like 6 minutes.
Oh yeah.
There's, we used to show highlights of the Braves game in the afternoon because we had it, and with the internet and social media and the way ESPN does stuff, what we did then is obsolete.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's just no time.
Get the scores and all the highlights of all the national games because nobody got them from ESPN, but you don't do that now.
Right. And all the specialization out there with cable and all that kind of stuff. And that's why you buy a dry cleaner. That's why you buy a dry cleaner. You saw that coming way before the rest of us, my friend. You just, unless I were under a rock, you could see what was happening. You could just see when you go to work in the afternoon or early morning or whatever, and you're doing television and you're greeted at the door by the news director who says, you know what, we're not going to do sports tonight. you know that you better, pay attention and start making up plan B, because the last thing I wanted to do is be 40 or 45 or 50 without a job trying to find another career.
Well, you bought a dry cleaner. I switched to news.
Yeah. And congratulations for that, because that's a tough transition. And for you to pull that off, that's a real credit to you.
I had a news director believe in me, and that helped. And
right.
So, and I think what I learned to hard work and what I learned from the people around me, the hard work that Scott Lynn taught me, and what I learned from the reporters around me, helped in that transition. But I was a little bit like you, is that after a while I got, I don't see the value of reporting on the NBA and all this kind of stuff. It's not really adding a lot of value to my community. I mean, it's a service, but and as you said, it became less valuable in the news. I mean, you were the last guy to get a photographer. Yeah. Hey, Steve, I know you prepared 4 minutes, but I only have time for 2.5. Right. So I was lucky that I made that switch to news, and it ended up staying in the business for another couple decades.
Right. Well, I was really fortunate to be a part of the whole deal when we were able to do a lot of different things. When sports did matter, the additional programming that we did with, the Cascade runoff and our high school football programs, and just, if the Ducks were doing well and actually made it to a bowl game, a half an hour special program, and you go on and on and on. Those were really fun days, and being able to place value in your community with those types of things really made you feel good. and a lot of hard work, but then that's what we were there for. That was our profession. And then over time, I've got a personality where I've got to continue to be challenged. I just do. That's just a chip in me. And if I start getting bored, or just the repetition is just, grinding on me, I get antsy, and I'm looking for something new to do. And I was in TV for a total of 22, 23 years, and we'd pretty much done it all, and there was no sign at all that we were going to increase our coverage at all. It was just continually getting, cut back, and you were just less of an entity. And with that in mind, I just felt that I've always been one to want to control my own destiny.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be, and I always felt so insecure. I hated to walk into the newsroom every day, just with the thought of, man, I'm wondering if I'm going to make it through the day. Because you've seen, I'm sure you saw in your career, the times when people would be called into that corner office, and then they would come out, pack their gear, and they'd be gone. And that happened a lot of different times at Channel 2, and we were starting to go through severe budget cuts in the late 80s and early 90s, severe, to the point where we had a staff meeting one day, a total station staff meeting one day. And after the meeting, we were told to go back into our offices, our regular desk areas, and wait for a meeting with your department head to figure out what your future was going to be. And boy, I tell you, I promised myself then that I was not going to continue to live a life of stress like that. And it's not, it's no defense, no, I don't mean anything bad by that. That's just the way that the business was heading. And that was the end result of everything. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. I'd still have a family to raise. So I put kids through college, and I didn't feel like, the TV industry was going to support, my family. I could have left, tried to get another job in another market, but that would require, pulling my kids out of school, and I didn't want to do that. It wasn't fair to them. So, I just started looking for a small business to purchase. And it's not that I dreamed about being a dry cleaner. That's not the case. The fact is, I've always had a passion about owning my own business.
Yeah.
And after 2 or 3 years of looking at businesses, I chose that.
And you bought the dry cleaner still while you were working in TV for a while, right?
Right. I did both for about 3 years to get to a point where I felt like I was financially stable enough that I could let TV go and then just do this on my own. So my last day in TV was like the 30th of August, something like that. And then 9/11 hit.
Wow.
And when 9/11 happened, business just stopped. I mean, literally stopped. I mean, 0 people came in. We have short memories about that day. People were really scared.
Oh, yeah.
And when they get scared, they stay at home. And they stayed at home for 3 weeks, just watching news coverage and not really knowing what was going to happen or what to do. And I thought, oh man, what have I done?
Jeez, Steve.
But then things, obviously got back to normal. And then 2008 hit, the financial crash, same deal. Major financial jolt, and people stayed home, and we made it through that. And now we're dealing with this with the pandemic, which is worse than everything combined.
No kidding. So is it just the one dry cleaner, or have you expanded?
No, I have 2. I've got one in Lake Oswego and one in West Lynn.
And I'll let people know. I mean, you're just not a figurehead owner. I called the cleaner on the phone expecting to get somebody and say, hey, can you get a message to Steve Arena? I want to have him on my podcast. You pick up the phone, and you are cranking away at the business. I mean, you are hands-on.
Right. I apologize. I wasn't able to talk to you very much then, but we were right in the middle of production, which is the word for cleaning clothes, pressing clothes, getting them ready for the customers to come in and pick them up. And again, I never wanted to be an absentee owner. I just don't think that works. I just don't think that you can create something, the best it can be. I've always wanted to be a part of it. And I am a part of this. I mean, from doing my own book work to, I'm basically a regular employee at the shop. And, it's my own deal, and I enjoy it. There are different challenges, obviously, than what you deal with in TV, different pressures. But all in all, this is our 23rd year, and I think I made the right decision.
Yeah, congratulations on that, because we all talk in the business about, what are you going to do when you leave? Because we all do. Almost everybody lands on their feet in some way or another.
Right.
A lot of people go into public relations or marketing or whatever, and you chose the own business situation, and it's been really good for you and for your family, it sounds like.
Yeah, it has. And again, I can't emphasize enough that, it takes the people around you, the employees that you hire to help you. But there are a lot of pressures that you don't deal with in TV or, just going to a job and, getting paid every week or every 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. Now, we're dealing with the threat of snow this week and really cold temperatures. Well, the first thing that comes to mind, when there's a threat of snow, people just stay at home. They don't, dry clean is not on their short list of things to do. So now you're thinking about, oh, great, I got all these bills to pay and now nobody's going to come this week. So that's just the mentality of having your own business.
I don't put chains on the car to get to the Westlake Drive.
Yeah, but it's 24/7 and then some. But I enjoy that. And again, it's different every day. Amazing. This is our 23rd year, but I can go in and, tomorrow and something different, something new will happen. And fortunately or unfortunately, that's my personality. I kind of thrive on that.
Well, TV got you ready for that. When you left KATU, I was in news at Channel 8. I'd been there for a while. And what year was that you got out of KATU?
I think the first time was 92-ish, 91,
Okay.
90, late 91, early 92-ish.
Yeah, that sounds right, because I interviewed for that job. After going to work, I only had two interviews ever. One was that one. And the other one was 13 years later when I interviewed and actually went from Channel 8 to Channel 2 to do AM Northwest in the news. But I remember actually word got, Steve Arena's retiring, he's leaving, blah, blah, blah. And a woman came up to me in the newsroom, and you'll remember, Dee Dixon.
Oh, yeah.
Who we all loved. She
Yeah.
came right up to me, and she goes, don't you even think about it. And the funny thing was I hadn't thought about it until she said it, and I went, because I really didn't have this great desire to get back into sports. But anyway, so Carl Vardell was the news director. Does that sound right?
Carl Ziddell. Carl
Okay.
Ziddell, yeah.
Well, and the only reason I bring this up is because Lou Gallos got the job, who started in Portland, went to Seattle, and came. And Lou's a great guy. And I don't know if I really wanted it, but I got a hint from somebody who had interviewed with that guy in a different market. He goes, when I interviewed with him, we'd had lunch, and he brought his wife.
Oh.
And it was like the guy, he trusted his wife's perspective of people. So sure enough, I had a lunch meeting with that news director at McCormick and Schmick's over there on your side of the river. And he walked in with his wife.
Really?
Yeah. So, but I was ready for it, man. I was ready for it. I was talking, I think, we need to have, we need to cover sports, but we need to get we need to get the women interested, and I had a heads up. I don't know if I would have ever gotten the job because Lou was the right choice, because he was coming out of sports, but that was always just the strangest job interview I ever had.
Yeah, it's we can have a whole nother conversation on news directors and just that whole deal. And again, that's just one of the things that you need to be able to adjust to when you're in that business. And I'm sure it's the same way in any other business that you're around. And you had mentioned earlier in our conversation that the news director, supported you and, believed in you, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. And if you don't have that trust from a news director, you're done. And there's so many different personalities with so many different beliefs in that industry that, boy, I tell you, it is hard. And again, I am really grateful because I don't know how many news directors I worked under, but for whatever reason, we seem to get along. And again, sports, wasn't on top of the list of importance. So we probably, they just didn't really care that much. I don't know, but we got along, but boy, I tell you, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge.
You're an example of this, and I believe you earn that trust. You work your butt off. You're a team player. Try not, it's okay to ask questions and challenge authority, but you need to get with the program and be productive. And when that happens, that's when people have trust in you. And I know that's how you survived as long as you did.
Yeah, not be a problem.
Yeah.
Just don't be a problem. If they tell you to do something, ask you to do something, you do it.
And do it well.
And if that requires you going in on a weekend to cover a breaking story, you do it. You just do all those kinds of things, as you would do if you were in finance or whatever the case may be. A lot of it's just common sense. And that's just the way that I approached it through my entire career. And I know that's the way you approached your career.
Well, I hope I tried to, didn't we?
Yeah.
I noticed you were there for so long, Steve. You worked with some really big legends. Richard Ross was there when you started.
Oh, yeah.
Stan Wilson, Bosley, Melissa Gilbert, Kim Gilbert, Melissa Mills, Jeff and Julie, Natalie Marmion. You worked with some really important and strong news folks and weather folks there at KATU for all those years.
Yeah. Add Dick Bogle.
Oh, yes.
Pat Wilkins.
Paul Lindman.
Paul Lindman. Steve Dunn.
Yeah.
Matt Safino. Kathy Smith.
Were you there when Kathy was there?
Yeah.
Beginning, huh?
Kim Singers.
I forgot about
all of those. Bill O'Reilly. Don't forget Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly there.
Some people we can forget.
Bill O'Reilly was there for I can't recall 6 months, 12 months, something like that. I was fortunate for whatever reason. He liked me. We got along really well. We loved talking sports together. But
our good friend Tracy Berry was there for a while.
Tracy Berry, worked with Tracy Berry. So yeah, I mean, that's what I say when I look back. I mean, I was so fortunate in a lot of ways, and being able to work with those people. And you know what? I don't have a bad thing to say about any of those people. They were just such professionals and such nice people. What you saw on the air, you got off the air. And they were just, and that's why I said right at the beginning of the conversation, what I miss the most is the camaraderie of it all. And being able to go to work and work with those people. Jim Bosley. We can talk forever about that guy. He was, when I told him this several times, especially when he would go off on me, but I remember watching him when I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I would just have to tell him that when he started making fun of me for something that I did. I said, Boz, the thing I really like about you is I've known you for so long. I remember watching you when I was in 6th grade. He would lay off, but he was a riot. He was the kind of guy that had the personality that he would instantly light up the room.
Yeah.
Another person that I was fortunate enough to work with was Tom McCall.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, think of that, Tom McCall. And, I talk about Ted Wilson, introducing himself to me. Ted Wilson. I remember as an intern walking down the hallway and Tom McCall is walking towards me and I'm thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? Because it wasn't too long ago. It wasn't too long ago. I was in Tom McCall's office early in high school on a Capitol tour with my class. Yeah. All of a sudden walking towards me and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to handle this? Well, he of course stopped, put out his hand, shook my hand and said, hi. I'm Tom McCall, and welcome to Channel 2. And anything you need, you can come to my office. You don't hesitate. And from that moment on, we became really good friends.
That's awesome.
He was a tremendous, avid sports fan. And we would talk about, he would come into the office on a Monday, and he would just walk in and we would talk sports from the weekend. And he was one of my favorites, man. And the fact that I had the opportunity to share a newsroom with him. It's just, I can't put that into words.
And that's kind of an interesting part of sports when you think about it, Steve, is that, we knew sports wasn't a high priority and it was losing, kind of its value in a newscast over time. but everybody wanted to come into our office and talk about the Blazers or the Ducks or the Beavers or the Wildcats.
I could never understand that. I could just never. It's on everybody's mind. The Blazers are doing well. That's all anybody talks about. Football, that's what they don't talk about weather. They don't come in and say, boy, that was sure a nice day on Saturday, wasn't it? Bright, sunny sky. Did you see all the stars at night? Wasn't that cool? They don't talk about that yet. Weather, it
was incredible last night.
They don't have it just once. They've got it like 10 times during the newscast now. It's just like, come on, I can see it's dark, it's gray, it's wet, it's rainy. Okay, that's all I need to know.
Well,
so of course, me and Bosley,
great memories about those people. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is so we can visit folks and kind of check in. So I really appreciate your time. And as we know, we never worked together, but we did work in that market together in the same sports era. And I always admired your work and your professionalism, and you were a very friendly guy. So I'm glad things are going well for you.
And one thing I wanted to talk to you about, just briefly, if we have time.
Yeah.
We take a look back at what has gone on in the good old days. When you started in television, and I would have told you that Oregon State was going to win a college baseball World Series, not once, not twice, multiple times. Would you believe that?
No. Well, how about when I was working, college football wasn't that important because they weren't winning, but all of a sudden, 2 years back, the Ducks are in the national championship game. That was unheard of when we were doing it.
No, and to me, Rich Brooks has my vote as being maybe the greatest head football coach at Oregon of all time. Look at what the guy had to go through. He had no money. He had no money to give his coaching staff. There's no television. I remember he came up to Channel 2 one night after the 6:30 show and pitched a coach's show to me, which of course I would have loved to have done, but Channel 2 said, no, there's no way you do that. But he, 0-11, 1-10, 2-9, and then all of a sudden Reggie Ogburn comes in, and then Bill Musgrave comes in, and for him to get that program to the Rose Bowl, I think is a phenomenal accomplishment.
Well, here's the reason: is back in our day, if you ever did interviews in those locker rooms at Autzen Stadium, and compared to the locker room they have now.
Boy, yeah.
It was all about that, but it had to happen to make it work. So.
Absolutely. So, hey, Carl, it was a real pleasure talking to you. And thanks again for thinking of me. Best of luck to you in the future.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of dry cleaning these days, but if I do, I'm coming all the way to Lake Oswego to get it done right.
We'll take care of you.
All right, Steve. Thanks, partner.
All right, Carl, take care.